Welcome to the Popcorn Talk Network, for the online broadcast network that features movie discussion, news, and interviews. Press 1. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
Congratulations. On behalf of the Popcorn Talk Network, the online broadcast network for movie talk, and the Schmoes Know, you are now a member of the Jedi Alliance. May the Force be with you, always.
Welcome to another edition of Jedi Alliance, episode 39 of the show that is about the greatest saga ever told. We celebrate that saga, and today we're going to celebrate that and another saga, as I am welcoming to the show one of my favorite people here in this known galaxy. He is from Access Hollywood, is also the co-host and co-creator, co-producer of one of my favorite movie shows out there, Profiles with Malone and Mantz, on this very Popcorn Talk network. He is Scott Mantz.
Well, hey, Ken.
Yeah.
Hey, Pit Boss.
Can I get a Mantz high five?
You give me a high five, pal. The high fives transcend Profiles. What an honor to be here on Jedi Alliance talking about one of the greatest franchises of all time. We're actually going to talk about another one as well.
Yes.
Because there is more than one.
And this is how this show came together. Is I've been working now and become friends with you over the last year because of our work together on Schmoes Know and some of the other stuff, and just getting introduced to you and your wonderful infectious energy and all that good stuff. And but I've known you as I know you as a Beatle fan because that's what we are.
And we're going to get into that
tomorrow.
Soon.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. But I've known you as a Star Trek fan.
Yes.
A Trekker.
A Trekker. I am.
Do you prefer, is it Trekker? Trekkie?
Well, see, I'm enough of a Trekker to tell you that we prefer the word Trekker over Trekkies. Although I don't know where that transition happened. In the 70s, they were Trekkies.
I seem to remember in the early 90s, it was like, whoa, you can't call us that. Because one of my best friends in high school, Steve Morrissey, I hope you're listening, was a Star Trek fan to the core, and I was a Star Wars fan to the core. We used to have a little feud that was fake but became real at one point. That's where I was like, no, we're not Trekkies, we're Trekkers. Like, oh, I'm sorry, apologize.
But you see, growing up, I love them both, and I still do love them both. That's the thing here, is Ken, that I think people really need to know. Yeah. This is not a Star Trek versus Star Wars debate.
Correct.
This is, I can love them both. And so can you.
This is two people, or two franchises living in harmony in the same galaxy. And that's, so someone out there early on, a few months ago, tweeted to Jedi Alliance, which you can follow, Jedi at _ Alliance on Twitter. Someone tweeted to me and Jedi Alliance, hey, you should get Mantz on the show. And I thought to myself, well, I'd love that. But Mantz he's not really a Star Wars guy. Oh. He's a Trekker.
I love them both. I'm a Trekker and I'm a Star Wars fan.
You tweeted back, hey, don't shut me out there, a-hole. I like myself some Star Wars.
I do like myself some Star Wars. I love myself some Star Wars. Now, we are talking about a franchise, a trilogy of films, the original trilogy. That did for our generation what the music of the Beatles did for our parents' generation. It's all coming together right now over me. That Star Wars shaped my life. There's no question about it.
Right.
But between Star Trek and Star Wars, there's just one that I just like a little bit more.
A little bit better.
Maybe a lot more.
Yeah.
But I do love my Star Wars. I can quote the original films.
You can.
From start to finish. And I would if we had, If
you had the time. Well, last week we debuted one of our new games, Boring Conversation Anyways, which the two contestants, one speaks in normal words, the other one has to speak in Star Wars quotes. So next time you're on with the group, we'll do that. We'll bring you into the conversation. And we're going to dive into the Star Wars and Star Trek conversation here in a bit. It'll be the bulk of this show. Again, follow along at Jedi _ Alliance, hashtag Jedi Alliance as well. You can follow me at Ken Napzok and at Movie Mantz if you want to have some conversations. Profiles with First Blood.
First Blood.
Your Star Wars First Blood.
My Star Wars First Blood was the weekend it came out, May 25th, 1977. But here's where the story gets good. I did not go to the theater to see Star Wars. You see, my family and my parents' friends' families, it was like 3 families, and we all went to the Eric Baderwood Theater, which is just outside Philadelphia.
To see There to Remember?
To see Roller Coaster. Remember Roller Coaster?
No, sir, I do not.
In Sense Around. This was a thriller. Now, Sense Around was a gimmick that sort of came and went in the late 70s.
Yes,
and the sound was so loud that it shook your seats to the core. I actually saw Battlestar Galactica in Sensorama in 1979.
Right.
And I'll get to Battlestar in a bit because that was a Star Wars ripoff that I love very much.
Yeah.
But the men went in to see Star Wars and the ladies went in to see Roller Coaster. Now, I was 8 years old, so I went in with my mom to see Roller Coaster. Now, Roller Coaster started a little bit earlier than Star Wars. So the first scene of Roller Coaster, a roller coaster goes flying off the rails, literally. And as an 8-year-old, I was terrified.
I'd still be terrified.
So it's still terrifying. I mean, I have sort of post-traumatic stress disorder from that incident.
I won't ever hitchhike in a big rig because of Large Marge from Pee-wee's Big Adventure. So
Tell Large Marge sent you.
Yeah, exactly. So
my mom
trauma.
took me in. Star Wars hadn't started yet, but it was sold out. So I had to sit on my dad's lap.
Right.
Well. So then I just went, okay, wide-eyed, and then the opening crawl, and then the blockade runner, and then the Star Destroyer that kept going and going and going and going. And I was saying to my dad, who's the golden guy? Who's the golden guy? And how come the little guy doesn't speak any English?
Just beeps and bops.
But, as an 8-year-old, I was blown away by it. It was a fun ride. But I think of like a lot of people from our generation who it sort of was a defining moment for them. It wasn't that moment for me because I had only just started going to the movies within the last couple of years. Yeah, I mean, I didn't have any perspective on that.
Right.
It wasn't until I saw The Empire Strikes Back 3 years later that was the movie that had the bigger impact on me. A, because it's a better film, and B, because when you're 8 years old and you jump to 11, those 3 years.
It's a big jump.
It's a big jump.
I call it your pop culture awakening happens about 11 or 12. You start to realize things are things. You know what I mean? Things are things. Put that quote on a T-shirt.
Things are things. So when I saw Empire, where the original Star Wars ended with the attack on the Death Star, which was unlike anything anybody had ever seen, Empire starts off with a battle that to this day is unlike anything anyone has ever seen. The AT-AT battle, the Snowspeeder battle on Hoth, where the rebels get the crap kicked out of them in that movie. The good guys lose. It's dark. Luke Skywalker gets his hand chopped off. Han and Leia kiss. Han is frozen in carbonite. And to top it off, Vader is Luke's father. Spoiler alert.
That's big.
That was the movie that had a much, much, much bigger impact on me.
Yeah.
And do you remember in the documentary?
Yes, I do. I watch that often.
Okay, it's a great, great documentary on Star Wars.
It's officially recommended here on Jedi Alliance.
It is a great documentary, officially recommended here on Jedi Alliance. So remember, but it was the weekend that it opened. So for that, I'm really, really proud. But by that point, 8 years old, I was already a Trekker.
It already happened.
It already happened.
All right, so let's stay with the 5 most important questions. So it's fair to say Empire is your favorite of the films.
But not just my favorite Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
Empire is easily in my top 5 favorite movies of all time,
wow,
period.
That's big.
That's how much I love Star Wars.
That's big.
Yes.
So the next question is, who's your favorite character?
Han Solo.
Mine too. Give
Han Solo, give it up.
Yeah.
Give it up. See, when I was a kid, Luke Skywalker was my favorite character. But then I grew up. I grew up.
Wow, if Mark Ellis was here, he Schmoes Know, he would have an issue with that.
Yes, I grew up, and it became all about Han Solo because he was cool.
Right.
He was cool. He was a pirate. He was a renegade. He was on his own. It was all about Han Solo.
Okay. I totally. But what drew you as a kid? It just was Luke was the hero.
Luke was the hero. Luke was the hero. That's what did it for me as a kid. Like, he did the right thing, and he had to have his power converters from the Tashi station.
Right.
But Han Solo, especially in The Empire Strikes Back, when he has that connection with Leia.
When the emotional depth comes in. Yeah.
The emotional depth comes in, which is why that movie is just the strongest of the 6 Star Wars movies.
Yeah,
by far.
Even over Phantom Menace, huh?
Much.
So the next question is, what is your favorite quote? And I know you're a quote machine.
I like to quote movies.
So what are your favorite Star Wars quotes? And Maude and I always like to say when we created this question that you work into daily conversation. Not just your favorite, but what are the ones that you...
I think the one that stands out above the rest, and this is a quote that is probably a favorite among many viewers and listeners of Jedi Alliance.
Right.
No try. Do or do not.
Yeah.
There is no try. That is a quote that applies to life. Do or do not. there is no try. That is something you put to use. That is something that in your darkest moments, when you are conflicted with life, where you're trying to figure out what you want to do with your life, where you're trying to make things happen, no try. Do or do not. There is no try.
Yoda's wisdom it transcends so much. A lot of what he says all the way through. Wars not make one great, all that stuff.
Judge me by my size, do you?
Right.
And where you should not.
Yeah.
For my ally is the Force.
See, he can do it.
I know my shit.
Cocaine Donkey.
Cocaine Donkey in the house.
Shit.
Talking Star Wars.
What is your favorite Force power?
Well, I mean, my favorite Force power, shoot, I would have to say just being able to do the stranglehold. Dark side of the Force power.
That's what we're so similar.
That's another high five there, brother.
That's
boy.
another.
How many times have you wanted to do the stranglehold on your boss?
Absolutely. I wanted. Yes, my last week.
Enough said. Enough
Can
said.
you do it through a conference call? Yeah.
I wish you could. Well,
Okay.
Hey. Size matters not.
Right.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay. I'm whipping it here, and also I just love this because Han Solo's my favorite character.
Yeah.
And he goes, there's that scene inside the asteroid in Empire Strikes Back when C-3PO says, "Sir, this asteroid is not entirely stable."
Yep.
And then Han Solo says, "Not entirely stable? Well, I'm glad you're here to tell us these things. Chewie, take the professor in the back and plug him into the hyperdrive." It's just a funny line.
It's great. And that's kind of what the prequels lacked, was that loosey-goosey funny humor.
Yeah,
but that's
did.
a different conversation that can go for hours. Final of the 5 most important questions before we go into bonus time is simply, would you turn to the dark side of the Force?
It's tempting.
Really? See, that's surprising. Knowing you,
it is tempting.
I'm like a Jedi of goodness.
I'm a light side of the Force kind of guy.
You are a light side guy.
I'm a glass is half full kind of guy.
Yeah.
I'm the eternal optimist.
And I take the glass and throw it away and say the whole thing was horrible anyway.
I mean, I have my moments. Who doesn't have their moments when they get down on their luck and they just feel like, man, I'm just going to the dark side. That's where it's at. But no, ultimately, I try to be positive, and I try to reflect that positivity and optimism on those around me. That's my gift.
That's your gift.
Or it's my curse. Depends on where you stand.
It's a gift. It's a gift. So, I would be, if you said that you would turn to the dark side of the Force, it might destroy my soul a little bit.
It's tempting. It's tempting, but that's where your character comes in. That's where you discover who you are by resisting the urge to cross over into the dark side.
Are you not inspired by movie
Inspired,
Mantz?
baby. Give it up.
Come
another
on,
high five.
another high five.
Yes.
Another Mantz high five. So some bonus questions.
Yep.
What is your favorite Star Wars sound effect?
My favorite Star Wars sound effect. I just like the sound of the TIE fighters firing.
That's a good sign.
It's such a great. It's just
Good sound.
I don't like the sound of the X-wing fighters firing.
Interesting.
They're not as ominous sounding. Although the X-wing fighter is a great looking fighter.
It's a classic ship.
It's a great ship.
I think
that and the Colonial Viper from Battlestar Galactica.
Well, the Viper
also,
is damn good. Yeah, and I always I like to think, like you said, Battlestar was back in the day maybe a little bit of a let's do some Star Wars on TV. So I think it was slightly based off the front end of the design.
Well, I remember too in September of 1978 when Battlestar Galactica made its 3-hour premiere on television against the Emmys. And the Emmys were so low rated because everybody was watching Battlestar Galactica at the premiere.
Star Wars Mania came.
And was it a Star Wars ripoff? Absolutely.
Yep.
But did I love Battlestar Galactica? I sure as heck did.
I did.
You did.
I was a little young to watch it. I was born in '76, but syndication reruns and not even Battlestar 1980 I didn't watch.
Oh, that's awful.
But the original run of Battlestar Galactica, I was young enough. I really loved it, watched it, but also believed it was part of Star Wars.
Well, because the production values, this is for television.
Yeah, but as a kid, I couldn't tell the difference. So,
Starbuck is a lot like Han Solo.
Yeah, so on the playground, I'd be like, early on, like 6 or 7, like when we were divvying up the roles on the playground recess field there, it'd be like, all right, you can be Luke, I'll be Starbuck, who wants to be Adama, who wants to be Vader? And kids would be looking at me like, what are you talking about?
You're getting so confused right now.
What are you talking about?
But Galactica was on every week. Star Wars I'd only seen the movie. But Galactica was on every single week. And for a long time there, or at least for that year and a half or so, I would have to say that Galactica actually trumped my love for Star Wars and Star Trek.
I can see that. I can see that.
And what's amazing amazing is that show came out 1978, had a 1-year run. Galactica 1980 never happened.
It shouldn't have
It was awful. It was terrible. Although the reimagining of Galactica was brilliant.
One of my
favorite TV shows of all time.
Absolutely.
But the production values of the original Galactica were so good that if you watch it now, especially now that it's been released on Blu-ray, it is amazing how well that show holds up. The only thing that gives away the look and feel of Galactica is the hairstyles.
Much like A New Hope.
Exactly.
The hairstyles of the Empire. Even Luke's feathered bangs.
Oh, sheesh. But, the costume design, and what was great about Galactica was Glenn Larson, who created the show. He had to depict a society, probably in a galaxy far, far away, not too far from the Empire. But because he had to do that, the show doesn't look dated at all.
Right.
Whereas another show that he created, Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, is very dated.
Yes,
Oof.
absolutely.
Yes.
So in the Star Wars universe, let's put yourself into the Star Wars universe.
Yep.
If you had to live on one planet for the rest of your existence, what planet would you choose?
Endor was the moon of Endor was kind of nice.
Yeah?
Yeah.
The forest moon of Endor is your choice?
Yeah, just get away, write a book.
I think that's a popular choice.
Yeah, I would not want to live in Tatooine. Why they kept going back to Tatooine? It's a desert. I already live in a desert. It's called Los Angeles. And we're having a huge drought.
And you want to head up to the redwoods.
Try to imagine LA but without the buildings. It's Tatooine. Trying to imagine Sunset Boulevard. It's the cantina of Star Wars.
Absolutely.
But
a wretched hive of scum and villainy.
The moon of Endor is kind of nice.
I can dig that.
Notice how I didn't say Endor.
It was the moon
of Endor.
We had that conversation a couple weeks ago here.
I couldn't have told you that if I was not a Star Wars fan.
No, I know you are, but we had that conversation. It's funny you bring that up because one of our previous guests, Megan Finley, had a similar answer where she said Endor. And some people kind of jumped in the chat rooms and comments days later like, well, it's actually the forest moon of Endor. It is, but I think we can all agree that if you say Endor, you know what you mean.
Yes,
if we want to get technical, Yavin 4 was the fourth moon of Yavin. We understand that, but you're right though. It is the forest moon of Endor.
If you're going to get technical, and I like to be particular.
Star Wars fans and Star Trek fans do
like to be
technical.
particular. Oh yes, they do. Yes, they do. Hit me up.
Final question is it's kind of a movie history thing, and we're going to transition into some Star Wars the historical impact of the film here with this Mr. Movie Mantz of movie knowledge. What is your favorite piece of Star Wars music?
Oh, my favorite piece of Star Wars music. Ooh, well, that's got to be the chase through the asteroid field.
Interesting.
Of Empire Strikes Back. In fact, when Alicia and I did a profiles on John Williams, our number one score of all of John Williams' scores was the score to The Empire Strikes Back. And my Right Stuff, my favorite score of John Williams, was the asteroid chase in Empire.
Interesting.
It is just so rousing and exciting, and it keeps you on the edge of your seat. It is just absolutely movie music at its finest.
I'm going to go back. I have the that CD set that was released maybe 15, 20 years ago now with the book.
I got those?
Yeah, you got, and it has the 4 discs.
Yeah.
I'm going to go take that in because that's not something that's not
well,
the
what's
answer.
Yours?
Mine's Binary Sunset, the Force theme.
Oh, okay.
It's hard for me to not be inspired, but also have a sense of melancholy underneath it. You know what I mean? Like it's
the Dual Suns.
Yeah, the Dual Suns. The
where
one
he's looking out.
That's
a moment.
Part of the core of Star Wars.
That hits you in the heart. That's more of a heartfelt moment. Right.
Yeah, but I love stuff like I love the Ewok March. The
yeah.
I love that.
I can't jump in with you on the Ewoks now.
All right,
I'm watching Jedi. Whenever I try to watch Jedi, and I watch Jedi. I like Jedi, but once you get to you see the little feet walking, I'm like, nah.
Again, I always say it's a little bit of a generational thing too. If you when Jedi came out and you're just over the cusp of a certain age, those Ewoks got into. We discussed that on the Jennifer Landa episode.
I was 14.
Yeah,
I was 14, and I love Jedi. But
there we go. There's some of it. The asteroid field.
Here's the thing.
Little Imperial March mixed in. Yeah.
So you've had the moment. You've had the big. At battle on Hoth, okay, and Luke single-handedly destroys
the Hoth battle music is awesome too.
It's
very
great.
Clunky. It's got a clunky battle sound to it. It's great.
It is great. You know what I love about that scene is when the rebel officer is looking through, and you hear the stopping before you see it.
That is, I've said it many, many times on this show, on my other show, Spotlight Star Wars, that is one of my favorite Star Wars moments, because it's kind of actually the most terrifying moment for me as a young fan.
He's like looking up and looking down, then he pans back and you see them walking. You still don't get a good look at him because the binoculars were mechanical, and you didn't get a good shot of them. And then you see the snow, the ice falling on R2 as the sound of and then boom, and there it is, and they're fighting, and then the speeders take off. So it's after that battle, and Luke takes off in his X-Wing, and he's going to, we're not regrouping with the others, we're going to the Dagobah system. And then the X-Wing flies off, the swipe as it transitions from the X-Wing, and then the very next scene, you see the Millennium Falcon being chased by 4 TIE fighters and a Star Destroyer. And what's great about that scene, the way it's set up, and that's what I love about it, is the Millennium Falcon is it doesn't look aerodynamic, even though it's in outer space, it doesn't matter, but it is. It's just spinning over and over and over again, and the TIE fighters are just swarming around the Millennium Falcon like flies.
And the angles,
you just can't get rid of them. and then just that moment when the Falcon just like pulls away and the Star Destroyers almost like hit each other.
Yes.
It is such a great moment.
It's a great sequence.
I love it.
See, this guy. Star Wars.
I know my Star Wars.
I'm convinced now, Scott Manson, you like yourself some Star Wars.
I do know my Star Wars.
So that's the 5 most important questions, plus some bonus questions. I want to take a little moment to discuss a little bit of news that's been going on. We've discussed it last week on the show. I discussed a little bit of this on my Spotlight Star Wars show, which you can find on the Napzok Files podcast feed on iTunes, Stitcher, or Podomatic. A lot of there's a lot of Star Wars news out there. A lot of it's spoiler stuff or plot speculation. I want to ask you, as a man in the movie industry, in the entertainment media side of it, all the stuff about Josh Trank being removed, maybe leaving the second anthology film, and who do you? In your mind, who would you like to see get a chance to direct that film or any Star Wars film? And then we'll come back to that anthology. I have a question about that one as well.
That actually raised a great point. First of all, when we were at the Star Wars Celebration, and they got to that last day when they were talking about the spin-off movies, and Josh Trank was not there because he was quote-unquote sick, I went, uh-oh, something is up.
That entire room pretty much went,
there's a disturbance, a big disturbance in the Force when he was not at Star Wars Celebration.
You have to be on on a hospital bed to not make that. If you're directing a Star Wars movie.
Unless you are on your last breath.
Right.
Why would you miss that?
Yeah.
Why would you miss that?
Come in, take some NyQuil, some whiskey, and get up on stage.
So then there's the word that Josh Trank is out of the Star Wars spin-off movie. Yeah. And then there's word that he was fired.
Yeah.
Because they had to do reshoots on the Fantastic Four movie, which he directed.
Yeah, and Kinberg produced. And Simon Kinberg's so involved in the Star Wars universe, so you can see a connective thread.
And apparently his behavior on the set was enough for them to say, we can't do this.
This is Disney. This is Disney.
And it's a Star Wars movie. It's a spin-off movie. But then, I don't know if you heard about this, one of the writers of Chronicle, which was directed by Josh Trank.
Yep.
Okay, when he tweeted out one word after he heard the news that Trank was out of the Star Wars spin-off movie.
Yeah,
you know what that word was?
The word was karma.
It was karma.
Yeah.
You don't tweet that word out unless there's something behind it.
I third degree connected to that writer, and he's coming on Schmoes soon. We're working on that, and if you catch him in the right mood, he'll talk. So we might get some information.
Get him drunk. But to answer your question,
but it's all the dark side of it. Yeah, but now that we got a spot open, and I've been asking everyone, it's a very interesting question. I have my answer, but what is yours? Who would you like to see?
Well, my answer, it's starting with the spin-off movie, and then I thought bigger picture, a Star Wars movie. I would really, really love to see one director direct a Star Wars movie because he had been mentioned to direct one a long time ago.
I think we have the same answer.
Steven Spielberg.
That's another high five.
Steven Spielberg.
Man's high fives are flying here today.
When I went back and I was reading the making of Return of the Jedi and about how Spielberg almost directed that movie, and I went, oh, man, Spielberg directing a Star Wars movie, how great would that be? And this news about Josh Trank, and even though that was a spin-off, it wasn't an actual Star Wars movie, it got me thinking bigger picture. Yeah. And it got me thinking, okay, so J.J. Abrams, who is a protege
of Spielberg, almost handpicked by Kathleen Kennedy because of Spielberg's words on this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But remember, Super 8 was his love letter to Spielberg.
Yeah.
And JJ, because of that influence he has of Spielberg, if Spielberg actually did direct episode 8 or 9 or whatever, their sensibilities wouldn't be that far off where they would stylistically be too different.
Right.
Even though Irvin Kershner's darker tone of Empire was great for that series.
Well, that's why I think, again, Spielberg, what is he, 72 now? He's not slowing down. He's got projects lined up for the next 3-4 years.
And
really.
how great is that, by the way?
I love that he's still going.
Okay, I remember
redefining age.
I saw Jaws in a theater in 1975.
Right.
And here we are later this year in October, I think. He's got another movie that he directed coming out with Tom Hanks in the lead. I forget the name. But I love that he is still making movies.
Right.
And it's not too late.
Still going. So it could work out. And I thought, put it outside the realm of the main storyline, 7, 8, 9. You give him an anthology film, and he definitely he could bring that Spielberg touch to it.
But beyond Spielberg, Brad Bird.
Yeah, that's a popular one in the chat room, too. We're seeing a lot of Brad Birds. And he's got Incredible 2's now announced coming out. And he's got Tomorrowland, which Tomorrowland, if you believe some of the stories, was the movie he chose over Star Wars, potentially.
No kidding.
Potentially, if you believe some of the stories you hear. But,
I'll have to ask him about that.
Yeah, why don't you ask him about that?
I will ask him about that.
But he's got the right sense of wonder as well, too. And I think that's important to me, to a Star Wars director. Well, whether they're a fan or not, I enjoy, but fans don't, like I said before, just because you're a fan of something doesn't mean you get to be involved in something.
Right. Sometimes it's good just to be a fan.
Sometimes it's good just to be a fan. But Bird, I want my directors maybe a little sense of wonder to their storytelling too.
You got to have that sense of wonder, which is why I'm actually concerned about the next Star Trek movie. Justin Lin, who directed 4 Fast and Furious movies, including the 5th one, which is the best of the bunch.
Yeah, kind of redefine the series.
Yes, and I agree that after Star Trek Into Darkness, Star Trek 12 was just okay. It wasn't as good as Star Trek 2009.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah,
I am concerned that while the Force Awakens has JJ at the helm, which is great after he directed 2 Star Trek movies.
Yeah,
and I just the next Star Trek movie. Now they're calling it Star Trek 3 for now.
Right.
It has to be good, and here's why. It is opening in July of 2016, which is just 2 months shy of the 50th anniversary of when Star Trek premiered on NBC, September 8th, 1966.
Right.
And here's the thing, Ken. Star Trek needs a Skyfall. Skyfall, when that came out in October 2012, was one of the best James Bond movies of all time.
Yeah.
A perfect movie to celebrate the 50th anniversary of James Bond, but look forward. And that's what that movie did. That movie was more of a reboot for James Bond than even Casino Royale was.
Well, yeah, because there's some of the issues. I mean, it's a whole separate show. But I loved. I picked up the Bond. I'm not a huge Bond guy in terms of movies outside those last 3. I've grown to appreciate it. But I love Casino Royale.
Yeah.
Quantum of Solace on 3rd or 5th viewing, I can get behind it a little bit. But it took me 3 or 4 or 5 viewings to go, okay. But yeah, Skyfall, I know what you mean. So
that's my concern is, and right now everyone is going crazy for The Force Awakens because it opens December 18th, as they should. And there hasn't been much talk right now about Star Trek. I mean, Simon Pegg is co-writing the screenplay, Justin Lin is directing it, and they kind of have to get going pretty fast if they're going to make a release date.
With Roberto Orci kind of being pulled off of it, or leaving
I'm
that.
worried. I'm a little worried about Star Trek.
A little bit of that. But Brad Bird, Steven Spielberg, get behind. The second thing I want to open up, and Mark in the engineer booth, get ready to answer this one as well, because you got some great Star Wars knowledge and opinions as well. I asked this on my other show, Spotlight Star Wars, that we got the Boba Fett announcement that it's not even official. It's like the 5th time the story is broke that it is going to be about Boba Fett. Maybe not confirmed. Never. All right.
Oh, it's not confirmed.
It's not confirmed by Lucasfilm. The Rap ran with it, and I believe it. And we've got some mutual friends, Schnepp and the like, who've been saying this for a long time.
Yep.
So I think that's the answer. But number one, do you want to see a Boba Fett origin story?
Here's how I feel about origin stories. I'd rather not have the origin story because what happens is you take away the mystique behind the person. For example, when they did the remake of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with Johnny Depp, directed by Tim Burton, they gave Willy Wonka a backstory. Now, in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the one with Gene Wilder, you didn't know what his backstory was.
Right.
And the way he sort of went back and forth between being your friend to like
crazy,
kind of crazy,
kind of diabolical.
It really kept you on your toes.
Yeah.
And it made him more mysterious. There was more wonder about him. Once you gave him a backstory, it sort of took all that away. And I hate to say it, but I really didn't need to see the backstory about Darth Vader.
And at the end of the day, yes,
that's
probably a good thought.
And I
understand
didn't want
why.
it. I didn't want it.
Yeah.
I mean, Ken...
You didn't want it from the beginning?
I did not.
I when I saw that first poster, the teaser poster, which I think is one of the all-time great movie posters of little Anakin, who we didn't know anything about yet.
And the shadow was Darth Vader.
And the shadow, I thought, yes, here we go. I love this.
But here's the thing. When they first announced that the prequels were going to be about how Darth Vader became Darth Vader and how the Empire became the Empire. Now, this was back in 1997 with the release of the special edition versions of the original trilogy because Lucas used the funds, the box office from that to pay for the prequels.
Yeah.
So, but when they announced that this next trilogy is going to be a prequel trilogy, I went, I don't really want that. I want to know what happens next.
Yeah.
Like what happens to Luke Skywalker after he killed, I mean,
you want to move the story forward.
I want to say,
you said he's got post-traumatic stress disorder.
He's totally going to have post-traumatic stress disorder. I mean, do Han and Leia stay together and live happily ever after?
Right.
No way. I mean, Han Solo, he's a scoundrel. He's not going to, you're not going to tie that guy down.
I'm going to go out late with Lando, honey. Don't worry. We'll be
I'll
home.
be back. Yeah. Yeah. There's no way. I want to know what happens next. I want to know what happens to these characters down the line.
I agree with that. I am a fan of Boba Fett. But I said it in my other show, like, I think there's a growing backlash to Boba Fett in a weird way. A lot of people saying, I don't get it. And I understand that. So
we're talking about a character, Ken, who said three lines of dialogue.
Yeah.
He's no good to me dead. Put Captain Solo in the cargo hold. What if he doesn't survive? That's it.
And
you're going to give him a whole movie?
And he's got some of the best outfits. I mean, I get it. I get the appeal of the Mandalorian armor. And the prequels, good or bad, we kind of already had a little bit of a backstory. Now we learn his dad is the clone guy.
I know a way to make the Boba Fett movie work.
How?
If it's not about the kid that we saw on Camino, if it's he starts to follow in his dad's footsteps, and this has been a rumor online too, where somebody kills the original Boba Fett, takes the armor, and becomes the total scumbag that everybody falls in love with.
There's a lot of talk about that, and that could be interesting. And on the Clone Wars series, Daniel Logan voiced again the young Boba Fett at the Republic Academy, and that was actually some good stuff. So in my mind, I already feel we've had the origin story.
Yeah.
Is it a Boba Fett adventure? Can it be based around Star Wars 1313, the video game that never happened? Could it be dark and gritty? Yeah, absolutely. That's what I could see. Do we need an entire...
I'd rather
Batman
not have
Begins
it. I mean,
this.
I know I'm in the minority here, and I don't want to upset the fans.
I don't think you are, though. I don't think you are. And I Am Ninja Panda says, I think Boba Fett will work best as part of an ensemble. A lot of other people, they'd rather see Bane, the Rule of Two, Knights of the Old Republic stuff. So then I want to ask both of you then, what would you... we've got 2 movies left to announce in the anthology series. What Star Wars standalone movie do you want to see?
Ooh.
Outside, I'm so behind Rogue One.
Rogue One sounds great.
Rogue One sounds.
Man, does that sound awesome?
Picture
that is going to be the Zero Dark 30 of the Star Wars universe.
I'm so excited.
Oh man, I can't wait for that.
But outside of that, what kind of story would you pitch out there?
Oh, what would I pitch?
What would you pitch?
Oh,
you're in a room with Kathleen Kennedy.
Oh, Kathleen Kennedy. Here's
Carrie
what
Hart.
I want to see. Oh my God! Oh, sheesh. What would I want to see?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Well, you know what? Man, I'm stumped.
Mark, what do you have?
I like you said, I would love to see an old Republic movie, like of the top when the Sith were they had amazing numbers and the Jedi were trying to keep them at bay. I think that would be really cool.
I am very late to the ball game on the Knights of the Old Republic stuff. I know Christian Harloff over at Jedi Council, that's his bread and butter, but I've read the first book in the Darth Bane series and had to put that down so I could reread Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire, studying for the other show I do. But Darth Bane is a very intriguing character, but I see it as a 10-part HBO show more than a standalone. Do you think, Mark, they could tell it all in one movie?
You bring up a very good point with a miniseries. That would be able to tell every bit of the story that it deserves. And if Disney can, I mean, they don't necessarily have a network like a cable network like HBO to put something that violent on.
Right.
Actually, now that I'm thinking about it,
Yeah, what you got?
I'm going to get behind a spin-off movie about Leia's ascension to the throne. Leia's ascension to become a princess.
I have never really heard anyone pitch that.
Well, because
little all-around backstory.
I think one thing that was definitely missing in the Star Wars films, especially the original films, outside of Princess Leia, there were no female characters.
Yes.
And I think, rightly so, there has been a very, very strong push for strong women leads in films.
Yep.
And what better way to show the strength of what Princess Leia, of what made her such a strong character, than to do a standalone movie, not show her as a little girl, as a kid, but like her. I mean, she was only 19 anyway when she made the first Star Wars movie. But show, like, how did she become a princess? Like, is there a love that she gave up for the better to better serve the Republic?
Becomes a princess and a senator and all that kind of...
How did she earn that? Did she earn it just because she was born into it, or did she fight some battle that she won and it was her promotion?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot to Princess Leia we don't know, and especially now that you're seeing strong women in film.
And they're trying to fill that story out a little bit in the Marvel series Princess Leia, which is a short 5-shot series here. It is my least favorite of the 4 new Star Wars comics that are out, but they've got some great stuff they're playing with there. And Mark Wader writes a story that he knows comics, he knows how to write it. It's just misfiring in some areas, but they've got they're finally addressing some of those questions of why when her planet blew up, she kind of went, all right, I'll comfort you now, Luke. Obviously, little underwritten, but storyline wise, they're trying to correct that.
Clearly, there's something to her character that she's giving Han Solo a taste of his own medicine in A New Hope.
Yeah,
like she's not taking his stuff.
Yeah,
she's giving it right back to you. Kim, in that thing, you're braver than I thought. Right. I mean, she's got to have a strong personality for a reason, and it's not like I don't want to buy that she just became a princess because it was in her dynasty.
Yeah.
You know what? I want to believe
dynasty.
that there was something to it that maybe there was this great love that she had to leave behind.
Right. And a lot of people are saying in there, I've seen a lot here, and it's my answer. So, Black Box TV, Salacious Crumb, A Crumb Awakens. I'll totally pay to see
Salacious Crumb.
A lot of Old Republic, but a lot of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Get Ewan McGregor back one more time to tell the adventures, and I think there'll be plenty of adventures on Tatooine guarding Luke. Though I do say I want 40 minutes of him drinking in a bar alone going, how did I get here? Star Miss Mandy says, waving the flag for you and Obi-Wan. A lot of Obi-Wan. What do you guys, Mark, you in there as well, what do you guys think about going back to Obi-Wan with giving Ewan one more shot?
100% agree.
Yeah, I think let's move on.
I like it.
Let's move on.
Move on.
Move on. We saw Obi-Wan. In those last 3 prequel movies. Let's move on.
Got it. Let's
move on, and that's what Force Awakens is all about. We are moving on.
Absolutely.
But is Darth Vader still alive? And will Han Solo meet his fate?
I absolutely think. I haven't read one bit of spoilers, but I don't think Harrison Ford came back other than to give him a proper Viking
That's what I'm talking
burial.
about. This is the burial he always wanted.
Well, we got to a lot of the news there. That was more than I intended. That's great. So I want to go a little bit with you because you're a film buff. You're a film guy. Before we get into the meat of this, which is Star Wars and Star Trek, can you talk let's do about 5 minutes here on the historical impact of Star Wars on the film industry. We all know it. Last week we ended the show with what Star Wars means to us, and it got kind of serious, right, Mark? There was like some tears in here.
It got a little misty in here.
It got a little misty,
I'm sorry I missed it.
It was great. And the connective thread and how Frankie Kazarian says he and his friend had the same Star Wars lunchbox and they got mixed up and they've been friends for 30 years since. Like that's what Star Wars means to us fans. But to the film industry, we know some of the stuff, and Mark's got some pictures going to be going over just some historical stuff with Star Wars. What's the legacy inside the industry?
Well, there's a huge legacy. First of all, the way Star Wars, the special effects. It revolutionized special effects. The movie cost about $10 million to make. Yeah. And the Fox, which Alan Ladd
Jr.
Laddie. He was the one who, while all the other executives around him were against Star Wars, Alan Ladd Jr. championed Star Wars. He backed Lucas up, and he was a man without a country. He was a band. He was a gang of one. But he took a chance, and look at the payoff. Look at the way that the word blockbuster was basically created because of Star Wars, because fans were lined around the block, breaking the block. That's where the term comes from.
I didn't know that. Breaking the block, huh?
Yes, a blockbuster is because fans would line around the block, breaking the block to wait to get in to see the movie.
I've learned something new today.
There you go. Actually, it started with Jaws, and it just really solidified with Star Wars.
Jaws is definitely deserves its place in kind of the pantheon of first blockbusters. I get that, but Star
more
Wars,
than anything, more than anything, with the way Star Wars really broke the mold was with merchandising.
Absolutely. I've got
look at this.
Look at
I mean,
this.
come on.
Look at this.
I mean, the only other franchise prior to that had come close to meeting what Star Wars would become was Planet of the Apes. You had 5 movies and a TV series, which wasn't very good. But I love Planet of the Apes. And the merchandising for that was pretty substantial back in the early 70s. You had lunchboxes, action figures, coloring books, T-shirts, all that stuff. But Star Wars changed everything. And Fox had no faith in merchandising.
Right.
Which is really where Lucas made one of his most brilliant business decisions of all time when he retained the rights for the Star Wars merchandising. And look how that took off. I remember that the Kenner toys, there was such a huge demand for Kenner toys that we couldn't even buy the action figures because they were sold out.
Early bird Christmas special.
We had to get like these vouchers.
Did you get one?
I still have one.
You still have one?
I still have a voucher. It's tucked in one of my Star Wars books, but my rosebud for merchandising.
First of all, that means you never cashed it in.
No, I didn't. I mean, I believe me, I definitely had my fair share of Star Wars merchandise. And I collected, especially when Empire came out, and they had the die-cast metal spaceships. I had the X-Wing, I had the Falcon, and I still have, it's all beat up because I played with it one too many times. Yeah. I have the little snow speeder. It's still sitting. It's on my bookshelf right next to my die-cast Yellow Submarine.
Nice.
Yes. Nice. Come on, it all comes back to the Beatles.
What about? I think one of the most important things of the legacy of Star Wars in the film industry is the sequel.
Right. And how the
idea of a sequel,
but a sequel that was superior to the original, which is rare. Even to this day, it's rare, but it happens. When it happens, it's great.
Not like it was the first time a movie had a sequel. You mentioned Planet of the Apes.
Right.
Not the first time, but this was the one that expanded the universe, no pun intended, on the EU. But
what was great about it, what wasn't great about Empire, so many damn things about Empire that just make it such a great freaking movie. Not just a great Star Wars movie, but a great movie. Just the good guys lose. Right. It ends on the ultimate cliffhanger.
All that's groundbreaking in its own way.
I just remember when I was watching the film in May of 1980, the Snowwalker battle. Yeah. The way the AT-ATs walked like elephants. Yeah. And it turned out that elephants were sort of the blueprint for how they should walk anyway. I didn't know that until I saw Empire Dreams. Actually, no, I saw that it was a documentary that came out in 1983 called From Star Wars to Empire, The Making of a Saga. Yeah. And
was that the one hosted by Carrie Fisher? She hosted one on TV.
It wasn't her. It wasn't that one.
It was, but Lucas was interviewed extensively for it. Yeah. I'll never forget Lucas's quote in that documentary. He said, "A special effect without character is a tool."
It's towards the end of the documentary.
Yes.
It's a big featured thing as Lucas going, if you don't have a story behind your special effects, you don't have a movie.
Right. And listen, A New Hope, you had these characters, Luke, Han, and Leia. Yeah. They were pretty one-dimensional. Yeah, they were stock, but they fit a fantasy. There was whether it was a fantasy or a Western. Right. It was a pretty general list of characters that could fit into any model. Right. What Empire did was it gave them depth. Yeah. It gave them maturity. I remember, when I was 11 years old and I'm seeing Han lean over to kiss Princess Leia, I was jealous.
Of Leia?
I just had such a crush on Carrie Fisher.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was this around the time she was married to Paul Simon? Or
it was around the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was around the time.
But I just was like, oh, Princess Leia.
And the depth to the main characters and then expanding the story. That's why I always say Yoda is the number one most important character in Empire in terms of just technically working. If it didn't work, it's a bad Muppet movie.
And kudos to Mark Hamill.
For playing off of Frank
played
Oz's hand.
Off a freaking puppet.
Oz is a master at what he does.
That commitment to playing that character, to playing Luke Skywalker, and you forget that he is a puppet because of Mark Hamill.
And that's a great point, because Hamill, because so much was focused on how Hamill didn't, quote, make it big after. He's had an amazing career in the voiceover video game industry.
Yep.
He's become this elder statesman of the Star Wars universe where he still embraces this thing, Harrison. I think Luke, the character, the acting, a lot of that is Hamill, because George certainly didn't direct him great in Star Wars. Faster, more intense.
Faster, more intense. You can write the shit, but you can't say it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So in Empire, you're right. He is playing off of something no more real than this toy I'm holding in my hand.
And he is, but you believe him.
Yes.
You are with him. You know, he's not, there's not one moment does he let his guard down. He is fully committed to that performance. And I got to tell you, too, the lightsaber battle between Luke and Vader in Cloud City.
Yeah.
The way it kept going. It started in the carbon freeze chamber and it moved out and then out and
we
out.
talked about it on the show. It's the most brutal of
a ton of lightsaber
the flips
battles
and the flops. Yeah.
But when you see this lightsaber battle, and Luke was not ready for it. Yeah. He wasn't ready. I mean, Yoda said, "Don't go." Yeah. And sacrifice my friends if you honor what they fight for. Yes. I remember that boy was our last hope. Oh, there is another. Oh my God, who's the other? Oh, it was so great. Much.
Then you had to wait 3 years.
3 years. 3 years.
And then so and wrapping it up, then you have Jedi, and Jedi, though maybe weaker a little bit, I get it, and Ewoks, but it's still, it rounded out the universe, and I think that's another part of the impact of Star Wars. Star Trek TV show, but also the movies expanded it.
Are we talking about Star Trek?
Almost.
If we are,
put it on now.
I'm putting it on right now.
You got your Starfleet insignia.
Representing Star Trek right here. The Captain Kirk insignia, right? I love them both, and I'm wearing. Here we go.
There you go.
Talk to me.
I think that's the final impact as we transition to the other part of this conversation today. Is the impact is creating this universe for us fans to live in and explore, that I can do a show about it, almost 40 years after the first movie comes out, and I have
a convention that goes on for 4 days.
An entire convention.
Yep.
Prior to that, there wasn't really anything like that.
Not on this level.
Not on this level.
I mean, the only thing that was comparable in terms of that, it's maybe because there was a lot more of it, was Star Trek. Yeah. I mean, Star Trek convention started in 1972. Right. The first one was at a library in New Jersey, and they were expecting 300 people to show up, and they got 2,000.
Right.
So, and this was just maybe 3 years after the show was canceled. But Star Trek is the only other film series or television or franchise, for that matter, that comes close to what Star Wars has been able to do.
Right.
Now, the difference is Star Wars and Star Trek. One is a fantasy, and one is closer to science fiction.
Right.
Star Wars took place in a galaxy far, far away. Mm-hmm. Star Trek was about us.
Yeah.
Star Trek was grounded in reality, in familiar terms. Captain James T. Kirk, the USS Enterprise, the ship had bulkheads, and it was from Earth, and even though it took place in the 23rd century, it was about us now. So this is why this is why Star Trek has resonated a little stronger with me than Star Wars did.
And I know a lot of people for that's true. So this will transition into the Star Wars and Star Trek conversation here.
Okay.
Why is it resonating?
Okay, a lot of people feel that what Star Trek did when it came out in the late 1960s, 1966, things were not looking good. We had Vietnam, the Cold War, there were riots going on, the counterculture was going on.
Yeah.
So things were not looking good. I mean, the future was looking very, very bleak. And here was a show that showed not only is humanity surviving in the 23rd century, but we are reaching out to the stars.
We're on our own mission.
We have overcome a lot of the obstacles that are affecting us right now. The other thing was that the stories were allegories, not just for the times in the 60s, but for times that are still relevant now. You had episodes that dealt with racism, that dealt with class structure, that dealt with war of any kind, that dealt with prejudice.
Yeah.
And when you look back on those 79 original series episodes, so many of them hold up exceptionally well today. Some of them are a little dated.
Sure.
And of course, the women on the Enterprise are wearing these like little mini skirts and everything. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah,
but it's the stories. And all the people who say that those are the things that they love about Star Trek, I'm on board with that. But for me, what I loved about Star Trek, what I still love about Star Trek is the characters. I love the characters. And when I talk about Star Trek, I'm mostly talking about the original series, because that to me is my favorite. Because when we are celebrating Star Trek's 50th anniversary next year, that's what we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of.
Right.
It was the friendship between Kirk and Spock and McCoy. You had three completely different people, different personalities that gelled so well together. Together, the three of them were like the perfect person. But for me, for this boy growing up in Philadelphia, what a role model Captain Kirk was, and still is. He always said and did the right thing. He kept his cool.
Always kissed a green alien.
He always kissed a green alien. He was so damn charming. He was like, he had that twinkle in his eye when he was flirting with a lovely lady. And he was a man of action. You know, he was a man of passion. And I got to tell you, for a long, long time, when I was going out on a date and I was like trying to put myself up, I would put on an episode called The Conscience of the King. And in the episode, he's flirting with a girl, with a lady, and she goes, "Tell me, Captain Kirk, the men of the Enterprise, has technology changed you? Has technology changed you?" And he goes, looks at her with a smile, and he says, "Worlds may change, galaxies disintegrate, but a woman always remains a woman." Whoa, what a guy.
Captain James
T. Kirk, baby.
Why is it, other than humans love to separate things and fight over them, why is it that it's always been Star Wars versus Star Trek?
You know what I think it is? And your friend and colleague Maud, like Garrett, she thinks that I get a little overboard with the versus thing. It's really all in just good fun. It's just all in good fun. I really, I mean, I love Star Trek more, but I love them both. I just like having fun with my friends who are more of a Star Wars fan. I just like being like, oh no, Star Trek is better. I mean, they're both great, but it's like the Beatles and the Stones.
Yes,
you can love them both. But you're inevitably you're going to love one. I know, we're Beatles guys. But inevitably you're going to love one more than the other. And that's how it is with Star Trek and Star Wars.
At the end of the day, I love the Who more than I love the Stones. But in high school, like I said, I mentioned a friend of mine named Steve Morrissey from Royal Grande High School, class of 1994. He was a big Star Trek guy. And we just had this natural rivalry. We tease each other about what was better, who was better. And he'd always say, well, we have more movies. And I'm like, well, yeah, I can't win that argument. And then we had more. And then I wish sometimes we didn't. But, And I remember the day Gene Roddenberry died.
Oh, yeah.
He was
1991, October 26th.
1991. Yep. And Steve was heartbroken. He was crying.
Yep.
He was a passionate fan, and I tried to and he was like, "Don't even talk to me. I don't want a Star Wars fan around me."
Yeah. Well, you should have seen me just recently when Leonard Nimoy passed away.
Oh yeah,
that hurt. Yeah, that was hard. That was hard. And it wasn't like when it happened. I was expecting it because I heard that he had been ill for a while. But what happened was I watched Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Just to sort of pay tribute to Nimoy. And, at the end of the movie, Spock dies. Right. And so the dialogue between Kirk and Spock obviously hit on a much, much deeper level because Nimoy had just passed away. So that did bring a huge tear to my eye. But, listen to the music that's playing right now. This is the music from Amok Time, which was the first episode of the second season of the original series where Kirk had to fight Spock.
Right.
And they're friends who had to fight each other. I mean, but that's what I loved about Star Trek. It wasn't the special effects. I mean, even though they were groundbreaking in the late 60s, they have not dated well. It's the stories, it's the characters. And this is back at a time before Star Trek could rest on its laurels of being Star Trek. The only way it was going to last was with great stories and with great characters, and that's why it endures.
And it does. The Star Wars fan of me always goes to the point that the first Star Trek movie kind of came out.
Oh, it's bad.
It's bad. Was that how much of a reaction was that to the sci-fi mania that Star Wars brought in?
All of it.
All of it was?
Great question. Give it up. Give it. That is a great question.
Man's high five.
Because here's what happened. In the mid-'70s, Paramount was talking about bringing Star Trek back as a television series.
Okay.
It was going to be called Star Trek Phase 2.
Gotcha.
And for the next couple of years, they hired producers, they commissioned screenwriters to write screenplays. Screenplays were written, and then they started developing costumes. They started developing sets. They started building a model of the new Enterprise. And what happened?
Star Wars comes out.
Star Wars comes out. And Barry Diller was over at Paramount, and so was Jeffrey Katzenberg. Oh, wait, not Barry Diller. It was Michael Eisner and Jeffrey Katzenberg were at Paramount, and they said, scrap everything that you've done for Star Trek as a new television show, we're making it a feature.
Right.
The result of Star Wars, the result of the impact of the popularity of the box office, of the merchandising, the result of that is why Star Trek, the motion picture, was a motion picture.
So that's it. So
that was it.
It is a direct, it's not even inferred, it is a direct reason.
And I got to tell you, Ken, thank God they never did a second television series, because I read those screenplays.
Not good?
They are bad. They are bad. In fact, Leonard Nimoy wasn't even going to be in the next Star Trek series because he just didn't want to be typecast.
Yeah.
I mean, he came back to do the first movie because they paid him a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I appreciate Star Trek: The Motion Picture because it was the first movie, and because it was actually a polar opposite to Star Wars. It was not all about space battles.
Right.
It was more cerebral, like 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
It wasn't the Star Trek that I loved when I was growing up.
Yeah.
That didn't come until 3 years later, on June 4th, 1982, with Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
Which is
now
which
you're
is a
talking.
good movie.
That is a great
And
movie.
then they tried to remake it Into Darkness. Mark, I know you're a fan of both as well, correct? You almost wore your Star Trek shirt today, right?
Yes, my science engineer shirt lost its insignia, but I'm indeed both a Trekker and a Star Wars fan.
So
I should have given you mine.
How do you grow up with both? How did you come to embrace both?
Well, it was easy. One was a television show, and one was movies. And and I grew up more with The Next Generation, and then went back to the original series, and then Deep Space Nine, and I really liked Voyager too. But whenever people would be like, no, this one's better, this one's not, it's like you said when you were introing the thing. It's one is science fiction, one is closer to science space fantasy. So it's easy to have room in your heart for both.
Absolutely, and that's kind of the point of why I wanted to do this today, and why I wanted to bring you on, Mantz, was for that. Now, the final thing as we wrap up this part of the show is in reading Chris Taylor's book, How Star Wars Conquered the Universe, which is Jedi Alliance approved. It talks about how some of the early scratch drafts from Lucas did have Star Wars on this planet, so to speak, but in the future. There was a galaxy in the future. It was going to be tied to us. What would that have changed anything for you? How would it have changed Star Wars?
Well, let's just say that was a fact.
Yeah.
That Star Wars was us, not 300 years into the future like Star Trek, but many thousands and thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of years into the future. I think ultimately what we love about Star Wars would have prevailed. Nothing would have changed.
Nothing, yeah.
I mean, you would have had familiar names like Jupiter and, that Saturn, that kind of thing. But ultimately, I don't think that would have changed the mystique, the mythology of the Force and the mysticism and the characters.
Right.
All that would have been the same. I think it's better that it does take place in a galaxy far, far away.
I agree with that.
Sky's the limit. You can do whatever you want with it now.
Yeah, we're not tied to it. It becomes the myth that
but
it is.
you brought up something before about how I just wanted to touch base on my friends growing up. Bill Ostroff, Andy Berg, Steve Levenkron, Eric Litt, they were Star Wars fans, true and true. And they, for years, would pick on me for liking Star Trek more than Star Wars. But I never caved. I mean, not that I look at it as caving, because again, I said this many times, I love Star Wars to pieces.
Yeah.
But when I would really stew on what it was that I loved about Star Trek versus what I loved about Star Wars, it was always Star Trek that came through, Star Trek that prevailed to me.
Right.
And to this day, sometimes they'll still. Here's a good story. When I went to my 25-year high school reunion a few years ago in Philadelphia, this guy Todd Capriati, big guy, comes up to me, puts his arm around me, says, "Mantz." Big Star Wars guy.
Yeah.
Says, "Mantz, I know I used to pick on you for being a Trekkie and everything, but that last movie was really good." This was the JJ 2009 movie. He goes, I said, "Todd, welcome to the bandwagon."
Yeah. I had that experience too. JJ, that first one
was great.
It's great. It's entertaining. It's funny. It's got heart. It's a damn good movie.
It's got magic.
And that's where I put a lot of faith in Abrams with Force Awakens.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Into Darkness, don't worry about it. It's fine.
It's fine.
It's
entertaining.
It's fine.
It just, they tried to make a movie that was bigger, and on a special effects scale, it was.
Yeah.
But it just robbed the film of the magic that the original had. And, I just felt like they just established that this was in a separate timeline. So why go back and redo Wrath of Khan?
You don't like to go back a lot.
I
like
want
to look forward.
Look forward. Turn the page.
Yeah. And as we
look forward.
move on to the next segment, we know that Star Wars and Star Trek are forever entwined and maybe in the same galaxy, because what little droid appears in the Abrams Star Trek?
In the Abrams Star. Hit me up.
R2-D2.
Wait, he's in
R2-D2 is in the 2000.
In the fight in the beginning, he shows up in the asteroid field.
Yeah. If you freeze frame it, you look it up. I'm
like 3 or 4 frames.
Yeah, I'm sure the internet will have it. It is a little freeze frame, and R2 is flying in the sky. So it is all one.
It is all one.
Namaste. We
love
are
one another.
We are
love
one
another.
So that's a look, a little bit. We could talk for a long time about Star Wars, Star Trek. Quickly, what's your favorite Star Trek movie? Is it Khan?
It's Khan.
Khan.
And no question about it.
You know, I like 6 a lot.
Undiscovered Country.
I like 6 a lot.
December 6th,
First
1991.
Contact's really good too.
Yes, that's the best one for the next generation.
Yeah.
But I would, if I was going to list the top 5 Star Trek movies, it would be Wrath of Khan, Star Trek 2009.
Okay.
Then First Contact.
Okay.
Then number 4 would be Star Trek 6, and number 5 would be Star Trek 4.
Star Trek 4 is just damn fun.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
It's a different style, but it's fun.
Yeah. Can you imagine that pitch meeting? Okay, so Kirk and Spock go back in time to save the whales.
Save the whales.
What? It worked.
It did. It was funny. So that is Star Wars and Star Trek. Thank you for joining along in that conversation. Yeah, this is a Star Wars podcast, but we talk about all things, and Star Trek definitely affected Star Wars, and Star Wars clearly affected the Star Trek galaxy by making it into a movie franchise.
So just like the way when Brian Wilson heard Rubber Soul, he did Pet Sounds. And then when Paul McCartney heard Pet Sounds, he said to the Beatles, hey guys, listen to this. And then they did Sgt. Pepper.
Exactly.
That's what it's all about.
It's all intertwined.
And if you love the Beatles, do not miss tomorrow's episode of Profiles.
Yes.
The lovely and talented Alicia Malone. Let's get that hashtag going and get it trending on Twitter. The lovely and talented Alicia Malone. She's covering the Cannes Film Festival.
Yes.
So this boy.
That's right.
This boy.
Gonna be
wants
here.
you back again.
I'll be back here tomorrow with Mantz and Chris Carter from Breakfast with the Beatles, and we're doing a profile on the Beatles movies. But
loving it.
Before we do that, we have Duel of the Fates. Duel of the Fates. Last week, we asked perhaps the most important question in the Star Wars universe as part of our Star Wars Day 2-hour celebration last week, which was a fantastic show. And I want to thank everyone for watching that one and sticking with us for 2 hours of celebrating Star Wars and hot cupcakes, man. It was great. We asked a simple question with a complicated set of answers. And that is, who really was the chosen one? Luke Skywalker or Anakin Skywalker? So, Scott, I'm going to ask you, what do you think?
Here's what I think. The answer to that question, who is the chosen one? Is it Luke? Is it Anakin?
Yeah.
The answer is, maybe it's neither one.
Ooh,
maybe it's neither one, because here we have The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing now is that maybe we haven't really figured out. You know, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not closure yet.
I agree.
It is not closure.
Yeah.
And if the Force has awakened and it's 30 years after Return of the Jedi, maybe there's still a Force out there.
Right.
And there's still, you know, what happened to Vader? What happened to Luke? What do you think?
You know, at the end of the day, I'm trying to remember exactly what I came down on. Mark, do you remember what I said last week?
No idea. Most of the people said Anakin.
Most of the people said Anakin, and Anakin is, to me, the chosen one. But without Luke killing him, you might not have had that quote-unquote balance restored. So I give a lot of credit to Luke. Mark, you went with Anakin, right?
Yes, sir.
So...
But if the Force is awakening, and if the Empire is striking back again, then
the First Order,
obviously, there's still something going on there.
Absolutely. And the fact that you answered neither is pretty good, because the final total for Anakin versus Luke was 61 Anakin, 15 Luke. I didn't count them up. I should have. I was running out to meet you for lunch. A large percentage of you answered neither.
Ooh.
And a lot of you said, we're still waiting.
we're still waiting because if the Force is coming back, someone's got to be the chosen one to stop it from happening again.
Here's some comments from the fans out there on the Jedi Alliance Facebook page, which is where we'll post this week's Duel of the Fates, which is coming up after this. Isaac Grove says, well, the question comes down to who has the highest midichlorian count, obviously, he said with a wink and a nod. Mike Beatrice, Schmoes Know Writer, who's going to be one of the guests here next week on the show, says Anakin because he brought 3 shitty movies to balance out of 3 good movies. Chase McAndrew said, since I don't count the prequels as canon, to me there's no chosen one. That's just not fair, Chase.
Not fair.
Not fair. Logan Mezer said, neither. I think that Palpatine created Anakin out of the Force, as he learned from his master Plagueis, and used that as a platform to make him appear as the chosen one in order to further Palpatine's plan of galactic domination. If the Jedi believed that they had the chosen one, they would have placed too much confidence in the prophecy and revealed weakness in their organization. Logan, that is a deep...
Wow.
Palpatine's behind it all.
Aluminum foil conspiracy theory, but I kind of like that.
I like it. Good one. Wait, he put a lot of thought into that.
He did. Logan, great answer. Jody Buston says, I think Yoda nailed it when he said, a prophecy misread, perhaps. I think the prophecy was not understood correctly, and then maybe we've not yet seen the chosen one. Jody, I think that is a great point, too. Even Yoda, the most knowledgeable Jedi around, is like, yeah, hey, guys, do you think we could have got this one wrong? Maybe? No? Okay, maybe not. Casey Keys says, I would say both. Balance is something to be maintained. I still think there could be some merit in the idea that I posted about the chosen one is not so much an individual, but a family or bloodline. That each generation of the Skywalker family will face their own, quote, Jedi trials to maintain the balance. Ooh. And what is one of the things we've got in the trailer for Force Awakens? Luke talking about his
that quote
legacy.
That he said in Jedi.
His legacy.
He says, my father has it.
Sister has it. Sister has it.
Yes.
And you have that power too. And finally, Tommy Steinbrecher says this is a great debate, and it was in the Facebook page, on Jedi Alliance Facebook page. Great discussion about this. This is what I love doing with Duel of Fates. Sometimes the questions are simple. Sometimes it's yes or no, but other times it spawns great fun conversation. I love it. Tommy Steinbrecher says this is a great debate, but the Clone Wars already confirmed Anakin was the chosen one in season 3 when he went to Mortis, which is one of the deeper, little bit of bizarre, it's kind of a magical mystery tour of the Clone Wars.
Waiting to take you away.
George Lucas very much involved in that storytelling process on Clone Wars, and particularly the episodes on Mortis. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It gets a little weird. Maybe drink a beer while you're watching it. But it gets a little weird. And in there, it does talk about Anakin. He's kind of the chosen one. And Obi-Wan says it himself. You were the chosen one.
You were the chosen one.
So there's that. That is a great debate. Now we're going to have a little fun with the Duel of Fates today. And it's a pretty simple one, since we're discussing how Star Wars and Star Trek are in the same fandoms and we can celebrate both of them. I ask you, and Scott, you're going to have a lot to say, I'm sure. Mark, you as well. And out there on the fan base, you can at Jedi_Alliance and on the Facebook page join the conversation on this debate later. Who would be the better Jedi? Whom would be the better Jedi?
Would be the better Jedi? I want to know.
Captain Kirk or Captain Picard?
Easy.
Yeah? No hesitation?
Easy. No hesitation whatsoever.
Yeah.
Without question. The better Jedi between James T. Kirk and Jean-Luc Picard would be James T. Kirk, and here is why.
I'm listening.
Because James T. Kirk and Spock developed the power, well, Kirk mostly, develops the power to move things with his mind to sort of get back at his captors. It's a long story. But in this episode, Kirk uses the power of the Force to save McCoy and Spock and get off that planet and keep going off into the final frontier. He has proven that he knows how to use the Force and he knows to quit when he is ahead. Take that, Jean-Luc Picard.
I like it. I can't argue with you on that. I'm going to try. Mark, in the engineer booth, who do you have?
I mean, I'm gonna have to say Jean-Luc Picard.
Just come on! I just gave you a great example.
No, I know, and I know you said all of the right things, and I agree with you. But you grew up with the original series.
Yes, I did.
So you tend to have a little bit more of an attachment to that series and that character because that's who you got to really identify with.
No question about it. It changed my life. That's the way it is.
Same thing with Picard as this elder statesman who, even though he's near the end of his life, he goes through so much on these different planets and the different holodeck stuff, and still maintains a discourse on the show. We're not talking about movie Picard. Let's not talk about movie Picard because he's an action hero.
Yeah,
or tries to be.
Tries to
be. But he's always diplomatic. He always puts his orders in front of any possible goodwill. He always tries to communicate. I think he would be more where Han
or the guy, but I can't argue with your Kirk thing.
I mean, watch the episode Plato's Stepchildren. In the last act, Kirk uses the power of the Force.
I just think Picard holds a lot of the Jedi ideals to.
Yeah,
to
he's
his heart.
He's the wise one.
Kirk reminds me a little bit of one of my newer favorite Star Wars characters, which is Kanan off of Rebels, and the great series coming out now, the Marvel series Kanan the Last Padawan. You should definitely check that out. Kirk would kind of be like that. He'd be, go get a drink and find a nice green alien in the bar. But he might be, Kirk would be like a Qui-Gon Jinn, Quinlan Vos kind of Jedi, kind of the ones who are kind of, on the edge.
From a certain point of view.
If Han Solo ever decided to become a Jedi, that's what Captain Kirk would be.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it.
That's a good way. So that's what we got there. We got Picard. We got Picard with some love for Kirk, and we definitely got Scott Mantz going.
Give it up for Kirk.
Captain
right here.
Kirk would be the better Jedi if given the opportunity. We're going to put that on the Facebook page, and you can join that conversation. Comment away, and next week on the show, we will read some of your comments out when we have a big Duel of Fates. Like I said, next week, writer, comedian Michael Beatrice is going to be in studio, and possibly some other guests I'm working on. It's going to be a fun show there. But for right now, Scott, I want to thank you so much for coming in, sharing your movie knowledge, your passion, and your love of Star Wars and Star Trek.
Love them both.
I believe in celebrating. I believe in being positive on the internet, and I did not want this to be a battle.
No.
I wanted to say the two of these things can live in harmony.
Coexist. They can
like
coexist.
Obi-Wan told the Gungans, you're symbiotic. You need each other. With Naboo and the Gungans. That's right, a prequel lesson for you here. So, Scott, tell the fine folks where they can find all your wonderful work.
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Movie Mantz. Make sure you watch our show Profiles with Malone and Mantz. That's the lovely and talented Alicia Malone.
Hashtag.
Profiles is their labor of love. Please go to our Facebook page. It's Profiles with Malone and Mantz. Like it, join in on the fun, and we will be back tomorrow.
That's right.
Alicia is out of town covering the Cannes Film Festival, so we are doing a special secret episode of Profiles covering the movies of the Beatles. You can also find me on Access Hollywood at accesshollywood.com, or check your local listings and watch Access Hollywood over the weekend to see my film reviews.
Absolutely. Thank you, Scott, so much. We'll have you back again on maybe some of the... We got to maybe get you in on the figure fight one, because I'm sure you had some Kenner toys in your backyard. Thank you again for joining Jedi Alliance. You can follow us on Twitter at Jedi_Alliance. Follow me at Ken Napzok. And like I said, I have the Napzok Files podcast feed, and I do a little supplemental Star Wars show called Spotlight Star Wars. I'd love for you to check that out, where I kind of get a chance to kind of ramble myself alone in my room on a Friday night talking about Star Wars. Thank you for hanging around with the show today. I know we did have a little bit of leg trouble. I saw that in the chat room. Sometimes technology is out of our grasp, and we just got to fight through it. Thank you for sticking around for that. And if you want to see more of the Popcorn Talk Network or this show, when it will be released later on YouTube, youtube.com/Popcorn Talk. They have so many shows like Profiles with Mantz and Malone, and Guilty Movie Pleasures, Box Office Breakdown, Meet the Movie Press, Marvel Movie News, DC Movie News. They got Anatomy of an Action Movie. They got the documentary show. There's so much stuff coming out on the network. Please check it out. Don't forget the Schmoes Know Main Show, which broadcasts from this studio.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Live every Thursday night, 6 p.m. PST. We have a big show this week. CinemaSins. The guys from CinemaSins are coming in, along with Matt Lieberman from SourceFed and other things. So don't forget, on iTunes, if you're listening to the show on iTunes, and a lot of you are iTunes only, and I kind of love that. An old radio guy kind of loves that. You just love hearing the voices. If you're on iTunes, do us a favor, subscribe, rate, and review. That's about it. We will see you next time. This has been Jedi Alliance on the Popcorn Talk Network. We talk movies. Thank you for listening, because many Bothans died to bring us this information.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit Popcorn